It's California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. We're in Sacramento today, and we are at the state capitol, and we are joined by Kristin Olsen, member of the California State Assembly. And I was reading the Twitter feed of Connie Conway, GOP leader of the Assembly, and she tweeted that the Assembly now has two women at the top. The Speaker is a woman, a Democrat, and the GOP leader is a woman, a Republican. Wow.
That's correct.
Yes.
An exciting moment for California. First time in the history of the state that we've ever had both leaders of the Assembly be women.
What do you make of that? Does it matter? It is historic, but does it matter?
You know, it's historic.
Right.
If it doesn't matter for other reasons, I certainly think it matters for symbolic reasons. Everybody needs role models in life, and that shows young girls that they can be anything they want to be in life. There are no limits. And so I think it's an important symbolic illustration, if nothing else, but it's an exciting time.
So we both know Toni Atkins well, Connie Conway well, both very bright, intelligent, gregarious women. But the question becomes, is their mere gender going to change the tone of the Assembly?
You know, it's probably too early to tell.
Fair.
Toni Atkins and I certainly have many ideological differences, but I have great respect for her leadership qualities. She's a person who's known for fairness. I believe she will do a very good job running the House, despite our perhaps ideological differences. But we'll see how things perhaps change or stay the same as time moves forward.
Let's talk about one place where there is an ideological difference, and that's on the question of regulation in the state of California. I think it's fair to say that both Democrats and Republicans would agree that California is a highly regulated state. And some would argue that that regulation is causing a flight of business to other environs, including and especially Texas.
Right.
What do you make of that? And I know you're concerned, for example, about some AB 32 implementation.
Yeah, I think it's of huge concern. Even now, as we begin to come out of the recession, we're still seeing jobs relocate to other parts of the country. And that hurts Californians. It particularly hurts people in the area I represent of the San Joaquin Valley, where we have 24% poverty rates. Families who are desperately still trying to find jobs. We can't afford a single job to leave California. We also can't afford regulations that put heavier costs on us. And so, as you just mentioned with AB 32, the latest regulation associated with that is slated to go into effect on January 1st. The California Air Resources Board is imposing the latest aspect of cap and trade, which will result in a hidden tax at the gas pump and add somewhere between 12 and 40 cents per gallon to the cost of gasoline.
What's so interesting about AB 32 is there's a lot of hue and cry about it, yet voters had a chance to repeal it a few years ago, and by 61% they said no. So there's this almost schizophrenia, frustrated about gas tax, frustrated about gas prices, presuming what you say is accurate, and I presume it is, but yet when they can do something, nope, we like our clean air, if that's what AB 32 does.
Well, I think part of the challenge with AB 32 is that so much of it was left up to the Air Resources Board to figure out the details, right? Because who doesn't want cleaner air? In the San Joaquin Valley, we suffer, a recent report came out showing that we have 95% of the people who suffer from the worst air quality in the state and arguably the nation. We need to do a better job at cleaning up our air. And so I think when people looked at AB 32, that's what they saw. The problems have become, once the agency has started to adopt regulations to implement it, it's just not working. We already pay the highest gas taxes in the entire nation, 71 cents per gallon. By adding this latest regulation, over 20% of the cost of gasoline will be attributed to taxes alone.
Let's talk more about it when we come back. For our viewers on HLN, we thank you for joining us. For our other viewers, we'll be right back with Kristin Olsen. So, Assemblywoman, you say that this regulation will create this hidden tax. What does that mean, and what can be done?
Yeah, well, here's what it means. Across the nation, taxes represent about 13% of the cost of gasoline. In California, it's 18%. And when this new regulation goes into effect January 1st, it's 20%. The legislature doesn't have to give approval. The governor himself doesn't give approval. It's just imposed by the Air Resources Board.
What's the purported purpose
So
of
the
this?
purported purpose is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions.
Okay.
The problem is there hasn't been any evidence shown that that will be the result. So far, we're still suffering from poor air quality. We're just taxing more Californians.
So is the policy that if you make the product more expensive, a la sin taxes for cigarettes, people will buy less gasoline? Is that why they're putting the tax on?
That's correct, but here's the irony in it. For places like the San Joaquin Valley, where we have our lowest income people living, where they are also more dependent on cars than any other state or than any other part of the state because we have no other options, those are the people it's going to hurt the hardest. We spend 20% of our income in the Valley on transportation costs. This is going to increase that further. And so what's interesting about that, we have no other choice than to get in our cars in the Valley. And now it's going to be even harder for us to save money to buy more fuel-efficient cars because the cost of those are increasing as the demand goes up.
So what can be done with this? I mean, can you float a bill to prevent it from happening? Do you talk to the governor? What do you do?
So what we need to do is have a bipartisan group of legislators come together and explore alternative solutions. Solutions that will reduce greenhouse gas emissions without placing more costs on hardworking families.
But can you reverse this CARB regulation legislatively?
We could. It would be a very hard hill to climb, but we could do it. And what we need to do is look at other countries, other states. I've done a number of energy study trips to see what other countries are doing. There are programs out there that don't take money out of the pockets of taxpayers, but still are reducing emissions and improving air quality. Those are the programs we need to model here in California.
But is there a way to do it without kind of upsetting the cap and trade apple cart? Whether you like it or not, it's here. And so
I believe there are. For example, in British Columbia, they chose to go with a carbon tax instead of cap and trade. Now, there are pros and cons to a carbon tax in and of itself. But the interesting thing is they are actually doing it to reduce emissions rather than to bring more revenue into the province, because every dollar collected is returned to the taxpayers of British Columbia through lower tax rates.
Interesting.
And so in California, if our interest really is in reducing emissions, then that's what we should be focused on. But what it appears to have been is to collect money through cap and trade so that then the state can use it for things like high-speed rail, affordable housing, which was the latest proposal out of the Senate. Those aren't going to do things to lower emissions.
You mentioned you're from the San Joaquin Valley. I must speak with you about the drought.
Yes.
Because we know the drought is hitting your community very hard. What's the report on the ground?
You know, it's very concerning. Still, despite the rains that we've had over the last couple of months, we are still in the worst water year we have had in decades. Families are suffering. And so you combine the lack of water with what's coming, with the new taxes. Families are literally crippling because of lack of jobs, because of high taxes.
I'm holding up a map. This is the recent U.S. Drought Monitor. I mean, San Joaquin Valley right here in that deep magenta.
That's right.
It's frightening, and that deep magenta is exceptional drought.
Absolutely.
That's the highest.
We need immediate drought relief. There's been a little bit of money put into the budget for that, but we also need long-term relief, and that's through building more water storage.
And we have to talk about that because we know that you and your colleagues are looking at a bond that may or may not go on the ballot in November. I know Anthony Rendon, one of your colleagues, is pushing so hard to get it. He calls it a Aquapocalypse. Have you seen that?
I have not seen that. What a name.
If there isn't a bond, it's the Aquapocalypse. And Democrats and Republicans seem to be coming together a bit. There's some question on storage, surface storage. What's the update?
A little bit. I have two priorities. I want to make sure the bond emphasizes continuous appropriation for storage so we can actually get it built instead of just talking about it.
Say that, yes.
The other important piece to me and my constituents is that it doesn't do anything to facilitate the Delta Tunnels project. The Delta Tunnels project.
The Bay Delta Conservation.
Exactly.
And I don't think it does at this stage.
There are two small pieces
really?
that do. And so we as a Delta Coalition are working very hard to get that out of the bond because it doesn't do anything to increase water supply in California. We need to focus on storage.
What about today?
Today,
what do we do today? What do you and I do today to conserve?
Well, we need, for example, I think we've talked about this before. I'm teaching my 6-year-old how to take a shower instead of a bath. Every drop of water that we can conserve matters. Some cities are getting very creative with stormwater capturing, et cetera. A lot we can do today to conserve water.
Her name is Kristin Olsen, member of the California Assembly. I'm Brad Pomerance. It's California Edition.